Okay, Vibhav, can you hear me? Can you see
Yeah,
me?
I can hear you very clearly. Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, so recording is
super.
on. We can we can do that at least this way. I don't see people joining, maybe because of the delay. But anyways, we can record that and we will be sharing with everyone and let's do this way. I'm sorry
Sure.
about that, but
No
uh,
problem. No problem. Of
so
course.
So then, hello everyone. We're happy to see you on the Meetup series for Bundesverband, Zrzeszenie Inżynierów i Techników Polskich w Niemczech. So today we have a fantastic guest. You saw the description, and I hope that you are thrilled as well as I do to hear more about the AI and ethical AI and some of the aspects of law we've got. So without further ado, Vibhav, thank you so much for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Victoria. It's a pleasure. And of course, as people are going to be here and as they're going to see this recording, what I'm going to do is to simplify things for people is that I would share my screen and take people through the through my presentation. Just give me 1 second.
Sure, and please go on mute.
Yeah.
Proszę się zmutować.
Just 1 second. I think this, here we go. Yeah, so we have okay, so we because of the interest of time and because we've agreed for about so I'll try to keep this short to about 40 minutes or perhaps 35 minutes, and then probably that can be followed by questions. What we're discussing today is, and the topic is embedding AI ethics even practical. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be capturing these different concepts and bring in sort of try to explain how AI ethics can become actionable. And you should be able to see my screen. Yeah, there we go. Not getting into any details of my introduction, but I am just to give you a little bit of a context of my background. I am a lawyer based out of New Delhi, India. I have been an intellectual property rights lawyer for over a decade. Parallel to that, I have been focusing on artificial intelligence for about 5.5 years now. My work is both, in my work in AI is both related to the law, connected to the law, and I would also have to say it's law plus. And right at the upfront, let me be clear, when I say law plus, what I mean by that is that I understand that laws can be of different, so laws do not cover everything when we speak on AI ethics, risks on AI, or responsible AI. And therefore, my approach is more focused on, of course, talking about laws that cover AI. However, also talking about areas where laws may not cover, but it's important to mitigate risk. That's the first point. The second important point is, of course, I am in India, as a result of which I come from a jurisdiction where we do not have the EU AI Act. We do not have a law like or pending law like the EU AI Act. We have certain laws that apply to AI, and then we have certain voluntary approaches. What we're doing today and what we're going to be covering today in the next 35 minutes is a coverage of first ethics, how ethics convert to responsible AI principles. And this is really, which is RAI that you see on the screen. It's responsible AI principles, which is like the features that you want in a product. And then, if you want to get to more detail, the concept of AI governance. On this, I am an associate partner at Anand and Anand, which is one of the top IP firms in the country, and there are multiple affiliate relationships that I am proceeding. Now, as you will watch this and listen to this, it's important for you to know that there are going to be QR codes across the uh, presentation, and you can, sort of manage that, and we can operate, and you can sort of scan on your device moving forward. So this is ethics, AI ethics, governance, and so you're looking at ethics, we're looking at AI, we're looking at AI governance, we're looking at a voluntary framework in India. Let's dive right in. Okay, this is obviously a very mature audience. So these couple of slides, I'm not going to take very limited time. The only point I want to highlight from this is that when we are talking about artificial intelligence, we are talking about training an algorithm on large amounts of data, and it's identifying patterns from that data. So if we're talking about AI as a pattern recognition tool, or we're talking about generative AI, where it is creating content, it's generating content at the output stage, right? And the final point that is important for us to understand about AI is that, of course, humans remain involved. It's an important point that I sort of keep emphasizing every time that we speak about this, is that while human intervention in AI may reduce, human intervention in AI output may reduce, human involvement continues, right? So human intervention may reduce, human involvement continues. So it's important for us to know that even as AI advances, human involvement will be there. And this is, of course, something that would be known to all of you, right? And of course, these are some examples of pattern recognition types of tools, which you're well aware of. For example, you have it in recommendation algorithms, you have it for in the healthcare space, you have for fraud detection, you have it in criminal policing perspectives. Then, of course, we have generative AI. Generative AI, as we understood, is written text, code, images, music, videos. So we have discriminative AI, which is pattern recognition. Then we have generative AI, which all of you obviously are aware, and these are these different ways of doing it. And of course, generative AI perspective has this entire discussion of what are closed proprietary models and what are open source models, right? And there are multiple generative AI use cases, right? Which can be in customer support, in healthcare guidance, software development, video editing, and marketing and advertising material. We're now sort of moving. So that's we all of us understand AI. We understand generative AI. We understand applications of generative AI. These are known to engineers. These are known to people who are involved in this space. Now we're sort of coming to the heart of the topic that we're discussing today, which is AI ethics. And let's frame this at a very abstract and in a very simple way. Ethics is There are two facets of ethics. We are talking about one aspect of ethics today, which is society's expectation from AI systems, right? And it's quite abstract. It becomes we always hear that what is right, what is wrong. Ethics of one country can be different from the other countries. How do you even achieve ethical AI? It doesn't sound sort of right. It doesn't sound it's not practical. It's ambiguous. It's not clear how you're supposed to do this. uh, but that's exactly what this talk is about. We are not going to be looking at ethics as the word ethics. What's going to happen as we go along is we're going to break down the concept of AI ethics into what are the different aspects or what are the different notions and features of when we build ethical AI systems. And then how those features map to responsible AI principles, and how do responsible AI principles then take us to AI governance, which is risk identification and mitigation. The main point that I would like you to understand here is that we're talking about only one aspect of ethics, which is what do we associate as right and wrong. It's about our shared values. It's not law, it's not compliance, but at the same time, we are not to take it for granted. Proactive steps need to be taken to be ethical and for the systems to be ethical. What are the actions, decisions to be taken will be an impact on an AI system down the line. Then there's also another aspect of ethics, which is known as ethical choice or ethics committee, right? In that scenario, we will have to look, that's a different concept where we're basically recording. When we're building a AAA system, we are just capturing instances of ethical choice there, right? And when we capture instances of ethical choice, what that means is that, as let's say there are a couple of us here in the room. Let's assume we're all from Poland, and we are suddenly, and we're very good engineers, and we want to build something for Africa. Now, despite being the best engineers from Poland, if we decide to make an AI system for Africa, it is very likely that subconsciously, without any fault of our own, our background, our experience, and the way we are may impact the development of the AAA system. As it is, which is so in one sense an ethical choice. There is an ethical choice that takes place across the AAA systems, and that's the other aspect of AI ethics. So one aspect of ethics is society's expectation from AI. The second aspect is ethical choice, which is where our own background and experiences drive this process, right? Moving forward, there are different aspects of ethics. There's issues of privacy, there's manipulation and privacy. Of course, people understand GDPR, personal data. There's manipulation and exploitation of vulnerable users. What about a toy that is with recording devices for children? Maybe your social media feed. There is safety. There's, of course, now with frontier models, there's the aspect of safety, then there's the aspect of security, then there's transparency, bias, and there's also explainability within that. Now, the key point is that now here's an important point that I want to sort of bring in when we're looking at ethics and we're looking at whether ethics is even practical. This is while we may say that ethics is different across the globe, while we may say that ethics is a aspect that we don't know whether what the ethical notion in India is versus ethics in Poland would be different. Ethics in Poland could be different from ethics in America. The interesting point is that when we look at the field of AI ethics, or we break down ethics into features that you want in products, you would find that the high level principles of ethical AI are quite common across the globe than one would assume. Right? So it's privacy. I mean, and anything that you're seeing on the slide right now, you're not going to disagree that you don't need it. That is needed. So therefore the point is that you have to manage it in a way that uh, you manage it in a way that the local application will change. Your local application and implementation of these principles may change. How privacy works in one part of the globe may be different from how privacy works in a different part of the globe. How would safety measures be taken, or what security measures may be taken? Some there may be global harmonization, some would be different. The point is that you have to look at it from this lens, that the features are common. And when we're talking about making, and this is what this talk is about, that when we're talking about integrating or building ethical AI systems, and I'm using ethics in a very broad way, just for a common language. We could even call it trying to build responsible AI systems. We could even call it building systems that adhere to AI governance, right? But for the sake of simplicity, when we want to build these kind of systems, these features remain common. For example, bias has already been, and this is not debatable, just a study telling us that bias is a very important feature for of ethical AI, right? And this is a study carried out by India AI. India AI is now the the international mission in India is known as the India AI mission, right? And they're talking about this. We move forward. Now, one more point. Now, I spoke about some ethical concerns, or those bias, privacy, security, transparency, explainability. Now, sometimes it happens, and of course, as engineers, you will be very, very clear that generative AI is different from what is not generative AI. So, discriminative AI, generative AI are different things, right? This is just to highlight that when we talk about ethical issues in generative AI as well, we have a study that has been conducted. 39 papers were reviewed, and you will see that when we look at the issues of ethics, even in generative AI, these also come down to these very similar features: safety, accountability, bias, transparency, privacy. So, safety, operate safely and securely. Accountability, they need to be responsible and their actions can be traced and justified. Bias, transparency, and privacy. So, again, this is a study. So, we've spoke about features of ethics previously. Now we spoke about ethics in generative AI. And we can see how there, even when we talk about the differences in ethics and how abstract is it difficult? And we're trying to answer this question, is it even practical to talk about AI ethics? We see that there is alignment, there is agreement. Agreement is safety, accountability, bias, transparency, privacy. These are features that you are agreeing, everyone is globally agreeing that these have to be applied. They have to be part of your AI system, right? And it's not as if these principles change across different domains. This very paper, and if you'd like to download the paper, I think here's the QR codes which you will get are there. They looked at papers on ethical dimensions across multiple domains: cybersecurity, education, general AI, healthcare, societal impact, legal, public safety. And under each of them, they found that safety, privacy, bias, transparency, and accountability at the highest level became your aspect which you would look at, right? Moving forward. And of course, this nothing to be discussed here. It's very apparent that these are ethical issues are way before chat GPT. This obviously everyone here is aware of the fact that bias is an issue. There could be bias in hiring decisions. There could be bias in when you play in the courtroom, right? And then there's been sort of an entire movement which is the aspect which is about stop AI ethics washing, right? So the point is that this is the again the issue that when we talk of ethics, we make the conversation so abstract, so unclear, so vague that we are not focusing on the action. It's extremely important to focus on what you can do when we're talking about ethics. In our talk so far, we have identified ethics into these different buckets, right? Privacy, safety, security, transparency, explainability, right? We've done all of that, right? So now when we look at it from a different perspective, we are moving towards the practical element of things, right? And in the interest of time, we have about 20 minutes left. So we'll walk through what can we do, right? First, just to keep it simple, the OECD principles. One could look at them as a starting point on how you have to look at the practical aspects of AI ethics. And again, see how the features of ethics, of AI ethics, has been broken down in the same way as we saw previously with ethics and with generative AI ethics paper. We're talking about a systemic risk management approach in each phase of the AI system life cycle. We're talking about ongoing basis and reasonable business conduct. And then when we're talking about risk, we're talking about bias, human rights, including safety, security, privacy, labor, and intellectual property rights. Now, again, see how safety and security and privacy and labor and intellectual property rights are again coming as risks. Now, I call them as risks. I call them as ethical features of a product. The point is that they exist in this manner, right? And you can see the commonality. And we're talking about risk assessment or risk management across the AI life cycle on an ongoing basis and responsible business conduct. So see how the concept of ethics is getting framed at first at one international level, which is the OECD principle. Then, while we have that framing, let me now very quickly take you through how ethics is playing out practically in the Indian context. Now, it's extremely important for me to re emphasize that when we speak about ethics in the Indian context, there are going to be some laws that will cover AI when there are no laws covering a particular feature of AI, a particular aspect of AI that we want to be ethical. Then we need voluntary frameworks, then we need standards. So the overall approach will remain law plus, right? So now as we understand the concept of ethics, let me quickly walk you through what India has done. We first of all, we released the national AI strategy way back in 2018, which identified five sectors for you: healthcare, agriculture, education, smart cities and infrastructure, smart mobility, and transportation. Then we have the Indian Supreme Court. And the reason I have mentioned this was a case in the context of where right to privacy was considered to be a fundamental right. In the context of right to privacy, the Supreme Court spoke about the importance of protecting, your personal data, right? So electronic tracks containing powerful means of information which provide knowledge of the sort of the person the user is and their interests. The information, especially browsing history of a user, is utilized to create user profiles. The use of algorithms allows the creation of profiles about internet users. An email can be analyzed to deduce user interests and target suitable advertisements to a user on the side of the window. The short point being that when we talk about ethics, we can also talk just about privacy. When we talk about just privacy within ethics, we can talk about personal data or informational privacy. And here's an observation of the of the Indian Supreme Court, which talks about the value of informational privacy, right? So this is a practical application of ethics, because ethics is nothing but features that you want in your AI systems, and you have the Indian Supreme Court recognizing privacy as a feature, right? Then we have, let's get into more framing all of these principles. This is now the responsible AI for all, in the principle responsible AI of India, that spoke about this document, right? We're talking about 2021, right? The principle of safety and reliability. AI should be deployed reliably with sufficient safeguards to ensure safety of relevant stakeholders with risks minimized. See how, again, consistently we had the OECD principles. We had a international paper written by people from Australia identifying transparency, safety, security, privacy across 39 studies in generative AI. We had, prior to that, we saw a slide where we had different dimensions of ethics. And then again, in a separate, in India, we find a document that has come out, which is again framing the concept of ethics in this way, which is safety, reliability, equality, inclusivity, non-discrimination, privacy, security, transparency. See how it is, how these features operate, right? How they're operating, how they're managing, right? So, and the commonality, we have to implement these principles. But when we're talking of ethics and we're talking about it being practical in nature, the question invariably becomes that these are the features that I'm looking for in an AI product, in an AI service. And it's possible that laws may not cover everything. For example, we have accountability. Again, accountability, see the principle of accountability and how similar they are to the OECD principles. We're talking about all stakeholders involved in design, development, and deployment of an AI system that covers your entire value chain. You have design, you have development, and you have deployment. Then we're talking about being responsible for their actions. Then we're talking about risk and impact assessments, which goes back to something similar to systematic risk management approach to evaluate direct and indirect potential impact of AI systems on end users. So we're talking about OECD, US, EU agreement, EU regulations. Then we're talking about an auditing process in accountability. Then we're talking about mechanisms of grievance redressal. Now, when we talk about mechanisms of grievance redressal, uh, in case of adverse impact, I would fit in all current laws, intellectual property laws, consumer protection laws, data protection laws, information technology laws, any laws that exist in your jurisdiction, current laws that can help you address harm from AI systems would come under grievance redressal. But again, our question is AI ethics practical? Well, the answer to that, a partial answer to that question is AI ethics can be practical if I understand ethics as a function of principles and principles of this type. And we're seeing these principles are remaining constant across the globe. Then fine, we have these principles. So what? How does that make any difference? What does it happen, right? So the question is, does it even matter? What do we do if practically if laws are not sufficient? The first, there's a research that has been published by Harvard Business Review, which highlights that if you become follow responsible AI, it protects the bottom line. What does that mean? It means, in simple terms, a financial based app, pension based app, started incorporating features of ethics, or we can call them responsible AI, in their products. It was the features were privacy, understandability, and auditability. They surveyed 3,000 people. The minute they incorporated responsible AI attributes, or you can call them as ethical AI attributes, directly in the product. Now, the ethics wasn't reflected as ethics, it was reflected as the feature of privacy, feature of understandability, feature of auditability. And when it was reflected like that, it became very clear that the adoption of that financial based app increased by 60%. That's what this study demonstrates. So, as a result of that, it's extremely important for you to know that it is that when we are talking of making ethics practical, we are talking about which feature I want in my product, how and why is that feature important, incorporating that feature and sort of making it more practical in nature. And that's how the world is also sort of moving in that direction, right? And that brings us to the final component of this talk. And probably I'll open up in the next 10 minutes for questions in the last 5 minutes. This is more about, again, the same aspect of its governance and is the way of making ethics practical. And governance is more about the fact that we're talking about making it about risk identification and mitigation. And it's happening in multiple ways. Now, see each point here, and this is going to tell us the entire landscape, right? There's laws, there's policies, there's frameworks, there's practices, and there's processes. So it's not just laws, it's covering policies, frameworks, practices, and processes. So if you're talking about making ethics practical, the laws will play only one part. You will have internal policies, you will have frameworks, you will have practices, you will have processes. Then the practical implementation of ethics happens across different domains. It happens through international level, it happens at a national level, it happens at an organizational level. Then it happens across the different aspects of the AI life cycle. It helps you to implement, manage, oversee, and regulate the development, which is one part of AI, the deployment, different type of actor, or could be the same one, and the use of the technology, right? So we're talking about implementing, managing, overseeing, and regulating the development, deployment, and use of the AI technology. It also helps manage associated risks to ensure AI aligns with stakeholder objectives. It is developed and used responsibly and ethically, and it complies with applicable legal and regulatory requirements. So, the short point being, it is talking about risk mitigation and identification. It's talking about different actors as development, deployment, and use. And it's broader than laws. And it is international, national, and organizational. What is the point that is coming out from this understanding of governance? That when you're trying to make ethics practical, which you have to make it practical, it is quite contextual. It is contextual. It depends on what you're trying to do. So if I think of ethics as ethics, I won't be able to do anything. I have to think of ethics as is am I looking at privacy? Am I looking at a security feature? Am I looking at an understandability feature? Am I looking at it as a transparency feature? And then based on that, build my tools. And it's not like you can choose just privacy and ignore the rest. Eventually, you will have to bring in aspects that will generate that kind of trust. Short point, which is already made, is that AI governance is not the same as AI regulation. There are different aspects of regulation, which so there's some parts would be legal, compliance with privacy regulation is legal, protecting intellectual property is legal, testing it for bias, how is the model performing, all of you understand that, that would be law plus, right? Of course, you have current laws that apply. You have intellectual property laws. You have consumer protection laws. You have in Indian context, you have data protection laws. And then in the Indian context, we have used a lot of sort of laws, current laws such as AI and personality rights, where we've sort of acted for famous personalities and protected their name, image, likeness, and persona from being improperly used by AI tools. So this is an example of how current laws apply. One actor is Anil Kapoor. Anil Kapoor was one of the hosts in that movie Slumdog Millionaire. Yeah, that was done in 2023. He was recognized by the Time magazine as one of the most influential people in 2024. Then we've acted for other sort of actors, right? Now, we're not going. So this is just to tell you that when laws don't cover, there are different sort of plus guidelines that exist. Uh, and I'm not getting into those details in the interest of time, but let's just say that whenever we do not have a law, we have the DEC has a fairness standard, the healthcare regulator sector operator has some guidelines on medical biomedical research in healthcare. Then a trade body like NASCOM has something on generative AI guidelines. For the law plus perspective, this QR code will sort of tell you how responsible AI ethics can be anchored in legal frameworks and how it can be anchored in the law plus framework, not just sort of, laws. These are these book chapters that are there, which sort of give a comprehensive overview of what's happening in the ecosystem. Uh, Finally, the last part, and then I'm going to open this up for questions, not hold people up longer. The main point is that we're talking about what practical steps can be taken to achieve responsible AI. What is the how do we manage that? As a result of which, there was a framework that we co-authored last year. Just some background of what that framework was supposed to do. It was supposed to make a responsible AI checklist. It was to self-evaluate AI use cases, You were supposed to focus on startups where you were supposed to use non-legal language. Then you had to be the perspective, had to be of a developer, not an exhaustive set of prescriptions. NASCOM was to focus on technical aspects and technical inputs, and we were working on the AI expertise piece. This was done with one of the trade bodies such as NASCOM, right? And this is known as the Developers Playbook for Responsible AI in India. It lays out for you in practical steps. It is meant for engineers. It outlines an AI life cycle. It divides into three AI types: discriminative AI, generative AI, AI applications, and it is providing you with risk mitigation prompts. The playbook is now aligned with India's AI mission, which, as you know, in India next year, just like we had the summit in Paris, we have the similar summit in India next year in February, and this is aligned to the Safe and Trusted AI pillar. India's AI governance guidelines have also cited this playbook as one of the key frameworks for responsible AI implementation. There has been more work after the playbook only came out last year, exactly a year back in November, about a year and 10 days back. We have now the India AI governance guidelines, which provide governance. Why am I showing this to you? Because if you're looking at making AI ethics practical, we're talking about how does AI governance operate. And there are multiple things in the framework. There is the free RAI committee, free AI committee report to your top right is your sectoral financial regulator that is talking about making AI ethics practical at a financial level sense. Below that, you see Parak AI, which is trying to work on an algorithmic audit perspective, which is a product audit, which is you take an audit, you take a AAA system and you audit it at the end product stage. And then, of course, you have the governance guidelines, and where you can see the developers playbook that we saw on the previous slide is sort of one of the voluntary measures that the industry is asked to look at for RAI implementation, right? Then we obviously have the developers playbook, and this is just a voluntary framework. Risk mitigation guides, it's supposed to provide you on how to mitigate risks. Finally, this is the example of the playbook, how it operates. I'm happy to share this for you to review it at your own end, maybe translate it, but it's to give you a perspective. You've looked at the entire AI life cycle. You have a discriminative AI model. Then how do you make it practical? You talk about risk mitigation prompts for discriminative AI models across these four stages. You look at generative AI model, you look at the conception stage, collection, processing, usage stage, design, development, testing, deployment, monitoring, and maintenance. So you look, they operate in 12 silos. Discriminative AI model across these four stages, Gen AI model across these four stages, AI application across these four stages, right? And finally, if you're looking to get into a little bit of a next step sort of perspective, that if you just not frameworks, but you want to go deeper, then you will get into AI audit frameworks. The India's governance guidelines also talk about accountability mechanisms on self-certification, peer monitoring, and third-party audits. So we also have work that's happening on process audits. And finally, we also have standards that are playing a big part, which is in terms of ISO 42001 and trying to make it actionable. So I'm going to pause here now. We have 5 minutes to go. This was broadly a very broad overview of to tell you where we were at ethics, how ethics translates to features, and we saw those features being common across the OECD principles, the discriminative AI ethics, the generative AI ethics principles coming in from the research papers, India's principles of responsible AI. Those features are the same, and then we moved to governance, and we looked at a few examples right at the end in terms of how governance can become actionable. Either it be a voluntary framework like a playbook, whether it could be a standard like ISO 42001, or it can be a third-party auditing system. The conclusion, I know handing it back to Victoria in just a second, the conclusion being that when you're looking at ethics, think of the features that you want to bring in. And as engineers, as technical people, it's extremely important to get non-technical people and other perspectives in the room to build what you're building, because some things may not be always solved technologically. You will need other perspectives. And that, for now, I will conclude. Happy to address any questions. thoughts, comments, and obviously, if there's anyone who wants to come back after seeing the recording, they're more than welcome to reach out.
Thank you very much, Vibhav. Me myself, definitely that is a fantastic topic. I really like that you brought that as a features because I think that it's becoming more popular now. And me myself, I was finishing the AI ethics course where we were building on top of those ethical, philosophical, sometimes even aspects. We were building really practical playbooks. So I
Right.
really tried myself how that works, and seeing that that is done on that scale in India, that is perfect. So my question would be, how do you see that we can use that playbook across the globe? And for example, starting small, I'm not saying just Poland or Germany, but actually in the corporates or in companies, how would you as a
Right.
also author of this playbooks, how would you suggest us to start?
No, I think it's important to know which part of the playbook applies to you. Are you working on a discriminative AI model? Are you building a foundation model? Or are you building an AI application like fine-tuning a generative AI model? First, know where you are. Then identifying where in the life cycle are you. Are you at the conception stage? Are you at the data collection stage? Have you moved to stage three in terms of building the AI model yourself? Or you've deployed and sort of taken someone's model and you're at the fourth stage where it's monitored and operating in the ecosystem. Once you know which type of AI model and which cycle you're in, the playbook will help you with risk mitigation measures across as a starting point from whichever way. So it may have been made in India, but the playbook became big. The playbook, the RBI guidelines, even India's AI governance guidelines, all these framework. The playbook is an example of a framework. It helps you start out in this direction. And then once you know where you are, you take some legal advice, you do some risk mitigation measures, you do technological measures, you do non-technical measures. The short point is that it is very important for you to know where you fit individually in the ecosystem. And of course, you can even go down the ISO 42001 route. You can even go down the AI audit for humanity route, which is trying to become compliant with their audit scheme. So most of these things are global, and you have to, it becomes, it's relevant across the globe, according to me. And it's a question of knowing what you're doing and which, and in one line, which risk do you want to mitigate? Which risk do you want to reduce? As long as you're clear on that, the playbook will help in that direction.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. That's what I wanted to hear. So that for everyone to apply that and really think into that direction. So I think that with that, we won't keep you more on the call, and we will be forwarding the records. And if anyone has any questions, I hope that they can reach out to you.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm just dropping my LinkedIn thing in the chat also, and I'm happy for people if they want to reach out, they want to talk about something and understand anything. Happy to discuss this. Happy to chat about it. Happy to help them if they have any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, those. That was a pleasure. That is a lot of information to digest, and I really appreciate your time and you being here with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Victoria. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.